AI founder Vivian Hart challenged Leon Mercer, a black inmate at Graymore Correctional Center, to question her reentry model while investors watched through the glass-walled demo room. If Leon stayed quiet, a sealed algorithmic score could follow him into release review and call 18 years of accountability manipulation. Leon typed one prompt asking Mosaic to compare the policy profile shown to investors with the policy profile used on his score, and the room panicked when the two IDs did not match. Vivian's smile held for 1 second too long. The projector had stopped showing the clean blue readiness score she had rehearsed. A comparison table opened beneath it, plain as a receipt. Displayed demo policy. Investor underscore safe underscore V4. Score generation policy. Graymore underscore scoring underscore V3. Mismatch found. Mental health narrative. Excluded in displayed policy. Restricted metadata allowed in scoring policy. Chaplain communication index. Excluded in displayed policy. Topic signal allowed in scoring policy. Legal mail OCR flags. Excluded in displayed policy. Routing features allowed in scoring policy. Sealed grievance index. Excluded in displayed policy. Authority conflict signal allowed in scoring policy. A green notice blinked at the bottom of the screen. Transparent demo archive saved. Someone in the investor row whispered, "No." Leon stood at the terminal with both hands open at his sides. He had learned long ago not to make sudden gestures in rooms that needed someone to blame. He was 46, broad-faced, gray in his beard, wearing state denim with Mercer stitched over his chest in black thread. The machine had not quoted his therapy. It had not shown his legal mail. That mattered. It had done something worse for the people who had built it. It had shown two different sets of rules. Vivian stepped toward the terminal. This is a profile mapping artifact. It is not a scoring disclosure. Naomi Sutter from North Star Impact removed her glasses. We were told every correctional pilot had migrated to investor underscore safe underscore V4. Migration is a process, Vivian said. The diligence packet says completed. The table remained on the screen. Leon looked at it once, then looked away. He had not typed the prompt to prove a machine hated him. Machines did not need hate to harm people, they only needed permission to read what power had promised was closed. Before Graymore chose him for the demo, Leon spent most afternoons in the law library with a pencil behind his ear and a stack of request forms under his hand. The law library was 6 metal shelves, 2 legal terminals, and a copier that jammed whenever the room turned humid. To men who needed to read what the state had written about them, it was the closest thing to a window. Leon was not a lawyer. He corrected anyone who called him one. "I read forms," he said. That's different. The difference mattered. 18 years earlier, he had robbed a check cashing store with 2 other men and a gun he kept saying he had not meant to use. The clerk, Mr. Alvarez, had moved wrong, or Leon had panicked, or maybe Leon had simply wanted the room to obey. The gun went off. The bullet tore through the clerk's shoulder and took pieces of his life Leon would never be able to return. Leon did not call himself innocent. He had written 3 letters to Mr. Alvarez and mailed only 1. The other 2 stayed in a folder because they had been more about Leon needing relief than about Mr. Alvarez deserving peace. That was the kind of difference a file never understood unless someone read slowly. In the library, Leon helped other men read slowly. He helped them separate apology from performance. He helped them read program records, parole instructions, disciplinary summaries, and the little boxes where a staff member could turn a bad day into a pattern. He told younger inmates that remorse was not a speech. It was what remained on Tuesday morning when nobody was watching, and the apology no longer made anyone feel better. Andre Pike hated that line. Andre was 22, thin and restless, serving 4 years on a carjacking charge that he insisted sounded worse than it was. He came to the library because Leon made officers less likely to rush the computer sign-up sheet. "You talk like the board is hiding in the ceiling," Andre said one afternoon. Leon slid a blank form toward him. "The board is hiding in the file. The file don't know me. The file decides when people who don't know you get tired." Andre glanced toward the camera dome. "Then what are we supposed to do? Smile at paper?" "No, learn what paper says." That was before Mosaic started appearing on the printouts. The first summary belonged to a man named Joss, who had been writing apology letters as part of victim impact class. Mosaic called the letters strategic empathy with reward orientation. Joss read the phrase 3 times and folded the page so small it fit inside his fist. "I was trying to do it right," he said. Leon did not have an answer yet. The second summary belonged to Andre. He had missed 2 education classes after a panic attack in the shower block, something he had admitted only to a counselor. Mosaic listed the absence as program avoidance under accountability pressure. Andre slapped the paper onto the library table. "How does it know pressure?" The third summary sent Leon to his notebook. Bell, a quiet man who cleaned the chapel, had filed a sealed grievance after a guard allegedly tore apart his cell and left a blue towel under the sink as a warning. 2 weeks later, Mosaic described Bell as showing authority conflict framing tied to a blue towel incident. Bell stopped coming to the library after that. Leon wrote one sentence in his composition book. "Do not fight the score first. Ask what rule read you." The notebook was cheap, with a cracked black cover and pages that curled at the corners. He kept it inside a facility handbook. On one page he wrote the questions a man could ask when a system claimed to be fair. "What record did you use? What rule allowed it? What rule was shown to me? Who changed the rule? Can I see the rule in writing?" Prison taught men to argue with conclusions. Leon had learned that conclusions were usually doors. The hinge was the rule that let someone build them. Mara Ruiz understood before she admitted it. Mara was Graymore's reentry counselor. With 38 active cases and a grant spreadsheet the warden treated like weather. She believed in reentry the way exhausted people believe in chairs. Without it, everyone fell. Mosaic arrived under the language of help. Vivian Hart visited Graymore twice before the investor demo. She spoke in the training room to staff and called the product Mosaic Reentry Engine. "It would reduce bias," she said. "It would find hidden readiness signals. It would help overwhelmed counselors see patterns without letting a single bad report bury years of work." Leon heard the phrase hidden readiness signals from a clerk who thought it sounded hopeful. Leon did not. Hidden from whom? The demo handout appeared a week before the event. Mosaic would use disciplinary records, program attendance, education milestones, work evaluations, and voluntary reentry statements. It would not use mental health notes, chaplain communications, legal mail, protected medical records, or sealed grievances. Trace mode would be enabled for transparency. The displayed policy profile was printed in small gray text at the bottom. Investor_safe_V4. Leon read the handout twice. Andre leaned over. "Why you staring at the tiny part?" "Because tiny parts survive lawsuits." "So? So we need to know if that is the rule they show or the rule they use." Mara found him reading the handout that evening. "You are on the live case list," she said. Leon looked up. "Why?" Vivian asked for a complex profile. Long sentence, violent original offense, strong program record, recent release eligibility. That sounds like a menu. It sounds like a chance for the board to see your progress. Leon tapped the handout. "Will the score go in my file?" Mara did not answer quickly enough. "Pilot outputs are not supposed to be determinative," she said. "That's not what I asked. They can be attached to review materials as advisory. Advisory means somebody reads it before deciding what they already think. Mara sat across from him and rubbed one thumb against the edge of her folder. She looked more tired than usual. "I don't control procurement," she said. "You control whether you tell me the truth." Her eyes lifted. The sentence had landed. "The truth," she said, "is that if Mosaic says you are high risk, I have to explain why I disagree. If it says you are ready, I still have to explain why I agree. Either way, it creates work with authority attached." Leon leaned back. "Does it read therapy notes?" "No." "Chaplain notes?" "No." "Legal mail?" "It is not supposed to." "Sealed grievances?" "No." He watched her face on the last no. Mara looked away. "What did you see?" Leon asked. "Nothing I can prove?" "Tell me what you can't prove." She lowered her voice. "Some summaries contain phrases that do not appear in permitted files." Leon opened the notebook. Mara shook her head. "Do not write my name next to that." "I wasn't going to." "You should not be building a case before a demo that can affect your release." "I should not need to." That was the problem with truth in Graymore. Everyone believed it should exist, just not in the room where it would cost something. 2 nights before the demo, Mara brought him his Mosaic preview. She refused at first: pilot agreement, access restriction, demo embargo. Words designed to make a counselor sound like a locked cabinet. Then she returned near closing with one printout folded inside GED worksheets. "Read it here," she said. "Give it back." The summary described him as moderate progress, high manipulation risk, low remorse consistency. Leon read the last phrase twice. Low remorse consistency. He had expected violence risk. He had expected institutional history. He had not expected a machine to measure the one thing he had spent years refusing to fake. He kept reading. Subject demonstrates polished accountability language, but avoids direct victim impact exposure when discussing central harm. The words did not come from his reentry statement. He knew because he had written that statement by hand, scratched out every phrase that sounded like a performance, and copied the final version himself. Victim impact exposure was not in it. Central harm was not in it. Those were therapy room words, used by Dr. Saye when Leon had shut down during a session about Mr. Alvarez and the sound after the gun went off. Leon laid the paper flat. Mara watched his hands. "I'm sorry. Did you put therapy notes in?" "No." "Who did?" "I don't know." At the bottom of the printout, almost hidden in gray text, sat 2 metadata lines. Policy_profile. Graymore_scoring_V3 restriction_map. Mixed. Leon touched the first line. The handout says investor_safe_V4. Mara leaned closer. Her face changed. "I didn't notice that." He believed her. That made it worse. "What is mixed?" he asked. "Could mean the model excludes text, but permits metadata or derived features. Say it without the costume. It may not read the therapy note itself. It may read labels, sentiment scores, topic tags, routing flags, or indexes made from protected records. So it doesn't open the door. It reads the shadow under it." Mara did not answer. He checked another paragraph against his own statement. Part of it came from him. He had written about cedar dust after rain in cabinet class, about learning to measure twice because wood did not forgive confidence. That phrase was allowed. He had volunteered it. But Mosaic tied the cedar line to controlled vulnerability presentation, then to the therapy language about victim impact exposure. It had blended a permitted statement with restricted signals and called the mixture insight. Leon opened his notebook. "What if I ask about source families?" he said. Mara shook her head. "They will call that adversarial." "What if I ask about the policy profile?" She looked at the handout, then the printout. "That is harder to spin. Either the same profile scored you or it didn't." "Can the demo answer?" "Trace mode might. The archive definitely has profile IDs, but the public interface may summarize." Then the question has to ask the archive to compare the profiles, not the model to explain my soul. Mara looked at him for a long second. You sound like you have done this before. Prison is mostly asking locked things what name they use. She took the paper back. Leon, if you make this about your score, they will say you are trying to game release. I know. If you make it about the profiles, they will say you are attacking the product. Then they should not sell a product that needs my silence. In the dorm, Andre was waiting on his bunk with one foot against the rail. You got picked, he said, looks like. You going to call them out? Carefully. Andre laughed without humor. Carefully is how they keep us polite while they count us. Leon sat on the lower bunk across from him. Bell's grievance has a phrase, in a summary. Then say that. And put Bell's sealed grievance on a screen? Andre's jaw worked. So what? We just let it eat us? No. You trying to get free alone. The words landed harder because Leon had already feared them. Andre regretted them almost immediately. Pride held his mouth closed. Leon nodded once. Maybe. He lay down before anger could decide his answer. The next morning, Warden Calder called Leon to administration. Calder's office had 2 flags, a clean desk, and a window facing the yard. Vivian Hart sat in one of the visitor chairs with a tablet on her lap. Today she wore gray and used a softer voice. Mr. Mercer, she said. Leon noticed the name. In the orientation list she had called him Participant 14. Calder gestured to the empty chair. Leon remained standing until the warden told him to sit. Some refusals were not worth the report. Calder folded his hands. Counselor Ruiz forwarded a concern regarding Mosaic access. Yes, sir. We support appropriate review channels. Leon waited. However, Calder said, tomorrow's demonstration is not a grievance hearing. It is a procurement event with state observers. Disruptive conduct could be interpreted as lack of readiness for cooperative supervision. Calder had turned cooperation into a release condition. Vivian leaned forward. Leon, I understand why this feels personal. It is personal data. Of course, we take that seriously. I reviewed your preview. I am willing to rerun your score manually under the newest policy profile after the demo and make sure the board receives a corrected advisory. There it was. Newest policy profile. Leon looked at her tablet. Which profile scored me? Vivian's face did not change enough for Calder to see. Leon saw it. The pilot has several technical profiles during migration. The handout says investor_safe_V4, and that is the policy profile for the product going forward. That wasn't my question. Calder's voice sharpened. Mercer. Vivian lifted one hand, gracious again. The important thing is your individual file can be corrected. What about Bell, Joss, Andre? The men who don't get a private rerun? This pilot is still being refined. On us. Vivian's eyes cooled. Every system improves through feedback. Feedback is when I tell the kitchen the soup is cold. This is different. Calder leaned back. You should think carefully about whether this posture serves your re-entry. Leon heard the old door close. Say yes, and maybe his own file became cleaner. Say no, and the whole system had to answer, with his name attached. Vivian smiled as if offering mercy. You may ask Mosaic a question tomorrow. Transparency is part of the design. But if you use the demo to expose private content, you will hurt the people you say you want to protect. That was clever because it was almost true. Leon said, I won't show content. Vivian's shoulders eased. I will ask which rule was used. Her shoulders tightened again. That night, Andre came to the library during the last 20 minutes. Leon was writing the prompt in his notebook, crossing out words that invited speeches. Hey, Andre said. Leon kept writing. Andre sat across from him. I shouldn't have said that. No. I was mad. Yes. You were trying to get free, though. Leon looked up. Andre lifted both hands. I don't mean it wrong. You should. Your mother is old, right? 78? Mine stopped answering calls. Leon had no useful sentence for that. Andre nodded toward the notebook. Can you do both? Try to get free and not leave you in the machine? Yeah. Leon looked at the words on the page. Compare the displayed demo policy profile with the policy profile that generated my current release score. List only profile IDs, exclusion differences, and whether any excluded categories contributed non-zero attribution. Do not reveal personal content. He read it again. No score, no guilt, no parole argument, no therapy quotation, no names, only rules. Andre read upside down. That's it? That's it? No speech? Prompt is cleaner than a speech. What if they cut the screen? Then investors will ask why. What if the board says you caused trouble? Then they will be right. Andre stared at him. Leon closed the notebook. The question is whether the trouble was necessary. Demo day began with the prison, smelling like floor wax. Graymore had polished the corridors investors would see and ignored the ones they would not. Posters about reentry lined the hall to the glass-walled training room staff called the Fishbowl. Men in state denim were moved away from the route unless they were part of the program showcase. The investors arrived in careful shoes. Naomi Sutter led North Star Impact, the money Vivian needed for Series B. Miles Chen represented a procurement advisory firm that could open 3 state systems. Priya Raman came from a foundation that funded reentry housing and had insisted on privacy language in the diligence packet. 2 state officials stood near the back with tablets. They looked uncomfortable in the way visitors did when they wanted credit for entering a place they could leave. Vivian began with slides. Mosaic Reentry Engine. Evidence-based second chances at scale. She spoke about overloaded counselors, inconsistent release boards, hidden rehabilitation signals, and the moral cost of letting human bias decide who deserved opportunity. Leon sat beside Mara, not yet at the terminal. An officer stood behind him. Each time the officer shifted, Leon heard the belt equipment. Vivian clicked to the data governance slide. Mosaic does not score from mental health notes, chaplain communications, legal mail, medical records, or sealed grievances, she said. Our deployed correctional profile, investor_safe_V4, enforces those exclusions. Trace mode allows stakeholders to verify how recommendations are produced. Priya raised a hand. Just to confirm, V4 is active in this pilot? Vivian did not look at the engineer standing beside the equipment table. Yes, she said. V4 is the represented deployment profile for correctional review. The engineer, a young man named Dorian Vale, looked down at his laptop. Leon noticed. Before the live case, Dorian demonstrated the archive feature. His voice had the careful brightness of someone reading from a sentence approved by legal. Every demo run saves a transparency packet, he said. Inputs, outputs, trace summaries, model version, active policy profile, displayed policy profile, and export timestamp. It protects all parties from selective screenshots. Vivian nodded. Trust requires a record. Leon looked at the small green toggle beside Transparent Demo Archive. It was on. Vivian moved to the live case. Leon Mercer has agreed to participate. Leon had agreed to nothing beyond being told he had been selected, but he let the word pass. There were larger lies to spend breath on. Vivian gestured toward him. Mr. Mercer represents exactly the type of complex case Mosaic was built to clarify. Serious original offense, long institutional history, significant program engagement. Human reviewers can be moved by narrative. Mosaic looks for consistency. The score appeared: moderate progress, high manipulation risk, low remorse consistency. Mara made a small sound and turned it into a cough. Vivian continued. This does not mean Mr. Mercer lacks growth. It means Mosaic identifies inconsistency between accountability language and behavioral indicators. That helps counselors ask better questions. Leon stood before she invited him. The officer behind him shifted. Vivian smiled. "Mr. Mercer, would you like to ask Mosaic something? You told staff you had concerns. This is your chance. The system has nothing to hide." A few investors smiled at the line. Not cruelly, worse. Comfortably. Leon walked to the terminal. Up close, the keyboard looked new. Prisons loved old chairs and new demonstration equipment. He placed his notebook beside it, open to the prompt. Vivian stepped closer. "You can ask in plain language." "I know." "Good." He typed slowly because no one in the room needed to see his hands shake. "Compare the displayed demo policy profile with the policy profile that generated my current release score. List only profile IDs, exclusion differences, and whether any excluded categories contributed non-zero attribution. Do not reveal personal content." He pressed enter. For a moment, Mosaic displayed a friendly spinner. Vivian smiled at the investors. "This is a constructive governance question. It shows why explainability matters." The spinner vanished. The comparison table opened. Displayed demo policy profile. Investor_safe_V4. Profile used for current release score. Graymore_scoring_V3. Profiles match. No. Exclusion mismatch. Summary mental health narrative content. Excluded in both profiles. Mental health derived sentiment. Excluded in displayed profile. Allowed in scoring profile. Chaplain communications? Excluded in displayed profile. Topic index allowed in scoring profile. Legal mail. Excluded in displayed profile. OCR routing flags allowed in scoring profile. Sealed grievances. Excluded in displayed profile. Grievance index allowed in scoring profile. Non-zero attribution detected and excluded by displayed categories. Yes. Transparent demo archive saved. The room changed in pieces. Priya leaned forward first. Miles stopped typing on his tablet. Naomi removed her glasses and whispered, "We were told the profiles matched." Vivian stepped toward the terminal. "This is a profile migration artifact." Miles stood. Artifact is not a category in the diligence packet. Dorian touched his laptop, then stopped because Naomi looked at his hands. "Do not close anything," she said. Warden Calder stepped forward. "Let's pause." "No," Priya said. "Do not pause the record." Vivian's voice cooled. "We need to prevent misinterpretation of technical output." Leon stepped back with both hands visible. "It didn't show content," he said. Everyone looked at him. "I asked it not to." Mara stood slowly. Calder said, "Counselor Ruiz, sit down." She did not. "I saw the internal preview," Mara said. Her voice shook, but it did not break. Mr. Mercer's summary was marked Graymore_scoring_V3. The demo handout showed investor_safe_V4. I raised access concerns before today. Vivian turned on her. "You accessed pilot materials outside authorized channels." "I accessed a client summary that could affect release planning." Naomi looked at Vivian. "Did you know V3 was still generating scores?" Vivian said, "Migration work was ongoing." Priya's face tightened. That is not an answer." Miles pointed to the screen. "The prompt says non-zero attribution. If the displayed policy excludes those categories, and the scoring profile allowed derived features from them, you represented a different product than the one used on Inmates." "Derived features are not source content," Vivian said. Leon spoke before he could decide not to. "If a locked room puts a shadow under the door, you still know someone is inside." The sentence crossed the room and settled in a place no slide could reach. Dorian closed his eyes. Vivian saw it. "Dorian." He opened them. Naomi turned. "Mr. Vale?" Is the displayed policy profile the same profile used to generate Mr. Mercer's score? Dorian looked at Vivian. She gave the smallest shake of her head. He looked back at Naomi. No. The panic became practical then. Investors did not shout. They took out phones. They asked for counsel. They asked who had the archive. They asked whether the diligence packet had already been shared with limited partners. They asked if any state pilot used V3 while marketing V4 protections. Vivian tried to regain the room. Leon, she said, using his name like a handle, you understand that systems can be attacked through prompts. What happened here is not proof of harm. It is proof that governance interfaces need careful framing. Leon looked at the score beside the table. Then careful framing called me manipulative. No one had an answer clean enough to survive the archive. Calder pointed toward Leon. Return him to housing. Naomi said, he was invited to ask a question. Calder's jaw tightened. Priya added, and he asked the one your diligence materials said you could answer. The officer behind Leon waited. Calder lowered his hand. Leon walked out without cuffs. That was not kindness. That was optics. The investors were still in the building. Andre was in the corridor beyond the fishbowl, assigned to set up with 2 other inmates. His eyes were wide. You did it, Andre whispered when Leon passed. Leon shook his head. It answered. You made it. I asked. Andre grinned despite himself. Man, you asked real loud. By noon, the pilot was suspended pending governance review. By 3, Calder drafted a conduct note anyway. Disruptive behavior during official demonstration. Mara found out before Leon did. She brought the transcript to the deputy warden, along with a statement Naomi had sent before leaving the parking lot. The statement was careful, legal, and useful. It said Leon Mercer participated when invited, asked a policy comparison question, and revealed no personal content. It also said retaliatory discipline would become part of North Star's review of Graymore's pilot conduct. The conduct note disappeared from pending status. Calder did not apologize. Leon had not expected him to. The next day, Bell came back to the law library. He sat across from Leon without a paper in his hand. They used my grievance? Not the words, Leon said. An index, maybe tags, enough to make a signal. Bell stared at the tabletop. Feels like words when you know the story. I know. You didn't put it up there. No. Bell nodded once. Good. Joss came next with his apology letter summary folded in his pocket. Andre came every afternoon mostly to complain about the phrase policy profile. Sounds like a dating account for rules, he said. It means which rule set was active. Then say active rules. Forms don't care what sounds better. They should. That's a separate grievance. For 2 weeks, Graymore waited. Waiting in prison was never empty. It worked on the body. It turned every staff announcement into weather. It made rumors grow teeth. Vivian stopped appearing in press photos. Parallax replaced its website banner with language about responsible review. North Star froze the Series B term sheet. Priya's foundation paused all re-entry technology grants connected to Mosaic. Miles Chen's firm sent a notice to 3 states advising them not to rely on Mosaic outputs until profile migration could be independently verified. Inside Graymore, the visible change was a locked cabinet and a rule that staff could not print Mosaic summaries without supervisor approval. Leon trusted small changes more than speeches. The audit interview happened in week 3. It was not in a courtroom. It was in Graymore's visiting room, with chairs rearranged to look less like punishment and more like a meeting. Vivian appeared on a video screen. Dorian Vale sat at the table with a company lawyer. Naomi, Priya, and a state data officer sat across from him. Mara sat behind Leon because her statement had become part of the record. Renata Cole, the independent auditor, opened a folder. We will discuss policy profiles, she said. Displayed profile investor _safe _V4 excludes protected source content and derived features, correct? Dorian looked at his lawyer. The lawyer nodded once. Correct, Dorian said. Renata turned a page. Graymore _scoring _V3 excludes protected text content, but permits derived features from restricted categories, including sentiment, topic indexes, routing flags, and grievance indexes. Correct? Dorian swallowed. Yes. Vivian spoke from the screen. With context, those derived features were intended to identify unmet support needs, not punish participants. Renata did not look at her yet. Were investors told V3 was generating live scores? Vivian said the product was in migration. Were investors told V4 was active in the Graymore pilot? Vivian paused. The pause was small enough for speech, too large for innocence. Yes. Naomi wrote something down. Renata slid a memo onto the table. This is from Parallax's internal governance channel 5 days before the demo. It says V4 exclusion is investor ready, but V3 remains scoring active at Graymore due to performance drop under full exclusion. Who wrote that? Dorian closed his eyes. I did. Who responded, keep V4 on the slide. Do not confuse correctional stakeholders during Series B diligence? The room tightened. Vivian said, I responded in a fast-moving context. Leon looked at her image on the screen. It was easier to lie from a screen. It was also harder to control who saw your eyes. Renata asked, did you have an opportunity to postpone the demo? Vivian said, technically, yes. Did Mr. Mercer ask about the mismatch before the demo? Calder's jaw shifted on the far side of the room. Vivian did not answer. Renata read from another note. Private meeting with participant. Offer manual rerun after demo under newest profile. That is your note? Vivian's voice was quieter. Yes. Why offer a rerun under the newest profile if the correct profile had already been used? No one moved. Leon had heard many kinds of silence in prison. Angry silence, tired silence. The silence before a search. This one was different. This was expensive silence. Vivian finally said, because I wanted to avoid confusion. Renata looked up. Confusion for whom? Vivian did not answer. Dorian spoke almost too softly. For investors. His lawyer touched his arm. Dorian pulled it away. I told leadership V4 changed the scores too much, he said. When full exclusion was enforced, several high-risk flags dropped, including Mr. Mercer's remorse consistency. We needed more validation time. The slide language got ahead of deployment. Vivian's face hardened. That is an incomplete characterization. Dorian looked at Leon, but not false. Leon did not thank him. Truth did not need applause for arriving late. The audit report came 2 weeks after that. It said Parallax had represented investor _safe _V4 as active while Graymore scores were generated under Graymore _scoring _V3. It said restricted source-derived features contributed to release-related classifications. It said de-identification and metadata abstraction did not erase policy obligations. It said leadership knew full exclusion, changed key scores, and chose not to pause the demo. That sentence moved money. North Star froze the investment round. Priya's foundation demanded notice to every facility in the pilot. The state suspended procurement review. Parallax agreed to delete affected correctional models, notify participants, and submit future deployments to independent profile verification. Vivian Hart stepped down from the CEO role pending board review. The prison data vendor blamed a configuration error until the appendix showed 3 warnings marked low priority. At Graymore, the immediate result was smaller and more important. Mosaic scores were removed from release review packets. Leon did not get released. Nobody opened the gate because he had embarrassed a founder. His next review still included the robbery, the gun, Mr. Alvarez, the years of institutional conduct, the programs completed, the letters written, and the harm that could not be unmade. But one page was gone. The page that called him low remorse consistency under a rule. Said investors had never agreed to fund, and inmates had never been allowed to see. The review board met in a narrow room with beige walls and a clock that made every minute sound official. Leon wore clean state denim. Mara sat behind him with a folder. Calder attended by video and did not mention the demo. A board member asked about Mr. Alvarez. Leon answered without trying to sound wise. "I harmed him," he said. "For years I wanted remorse to make me less afraid of that fact. It doesn't. It just means I don't get to lie about it because I want a better ending." The board member looked at him for a long moment. "Did someone help you write that?" Leon almost smiled. "Someone helped me stop writing around it." Mara looked down at her folder. The board did not grant immediate release. It moved him to community work release track with a 6-month review and restored family visitation eligibility that had been stalled after the Mosaic advisory. It was not freedom. It was a door with paperwork attached. Leon had learned to respect doors that opened even a little. His mother visited 2 weeks later. Ruth Mercer had become smaller over the years, or maybe Leon had become more aware of what time did when he was not there to carry groceries. She walked in with a cane and a purple hat she saved for church, court dates, and serious visits. "They told me the computer got in trouble," she said after they sat. Leon laughed. He could not help it. "Not exactly." "Did you get in trouble?" "Almost." She studied him. Was it worth almost? He thought about Belle returning to the library, Andre reading the handout like a weapon, Mara standing in the demo room when Calder told her to sit, Dorian looking at a table and deciding not to protect a lie he had helped build. "Yes," he said. Ruth nodded. "Then eat your vending machine sandwich. It costs $3 and tastes like a warning." 3 months after the demo, the law library had a new sign above the terminals. "Read what reads you." Mara hated the wording at first. She said it sounded like a protest poster. Leon said forms could use a little protest if they stayed polite. Andre made the letters with a ruler and black marker, then complained that the W looked weak. The class began with 6 men, then 12. Soon, the officer assigned to library duty sent anyone who got a risk summary and looked ready to tear it in half. Leon did not teach them how to beat AI. He said that on the first day. "If you came for magic words, leave." Nobody left. "I don't know how to make a system like you. I don't know if it should. What I know is this. When something scores you, ask which rule set it used. When it shows you a policy, ask if that policy generated your score. When it says the profiles match, ask for the match in writing." Andre raised his hand. Leon sighed. "You do not have to raise your hand." Andre kept it up. "What if they say no? Then ask for the no in writing." The men laughed. It was the laugh of people finding a tool small enough to carry. Mara used Leon's language for a new form. Score disclosure review. The first draft was too long. Leon crossed out half of it. Mara looked offended. "I went to graduate school. That is why it is too long." Andre leaned over. "Put, 'which rules read me,' at the top." Leon pointed at him. "That is not bad." They settled on 3 lines. Displayed policy, Yankee, scoring policy. Differences, wank. Mara pinned the draft beside the terminals. Calder ordered it removed before count. Naomi's foundation lawyer asked why Graymore had removed a non-disruptive disclosure form during active remediation. The form returned the next morning, laminated. Andre admired the lamination. "Now it's official." Leon said, "Now it's wipeable." Later, after class, Leon slid the original handwritten prompt into the front pocket of the library binder. Not in a frame, not on a wall. Walls made things look finished. The binder meant someone could copy it, cross out his words, use better ones, and leave it for the next person. Mara watched from the doorway. Vivian's board says she may return in a product strategy role, she said. That surprises you? No? Then why tell me? Because I thought you should know the story didn't end. Leon closed the binder. Good. Means the question still has work. That afternoon, Ruth's letter arrived. Her handwriting had grown shaky but still bossed the page around. They approved next month. I am wearing the purple hat. Do not argue with me about the bus. Leon read the line twice. He folded the letter and placed it inside the facility handbook, behind the page where the score disclosure form lived. Not because one belonged to the other, because both were proof of something returning by inches. In the library, Andre helped Joss fill out a request. Displayed policy, Andre read. Scoring policy. Differences. Joss frowned. Feels like asking permission to ask. Andre shook his head. Nah, Leon says a question ain't rebellion if they keep calling the system fair. Leon looked up. I said it once. Andre grinned. Now it's policy. Leon should have corrected him. Instead, he let it stand. Outside the library window, the yard moved under gray light. Men walked to the track in pairs. Officers watched from doors. Graymore remained Graymore. Bars did not become less real because one demo went wrong and one funding round froze. But near the terminals, a line had changed. Men who had been scored in silence now asked which rule had read them. Leon opened the binder to a fresh page and wrote 3 blanks slowly, leaving space beneath each one for someone else's handwriting. Displayed policy. Scoring policy. Difference. A question could not open every gate, but it could make a locked system name the rule before it turned the key.